And Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in Phil from Blackout Balter. How are you doing today, Phil?
Hey, what's going on, Keith? Great to be with you.
Yeah, that was almost like a live long and prosper. I like it. You have like weathered guitar hand, like chord hand.
Exactly.
Is he playing a chord? No, he's a big Star Trek fan. So yeah, fun times. You have a brand new album out. Congratulations. Animal is the record. For a debut album, long time coming.
That's right.
Uh,
A few
you had
years.
a very acclaimed EP a few years ago that I was also aware of, and really cool stuff. And I love the sound of the band. And this is, I know, a long sort of arcing process to get here today, right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we recorded the first EP, Twist and Bend, a few years ago, and we got like a really cool lucky break that some people have known about with regard to meeting the Killers, and they're sort of pushing us out to their personal studio and all that. And after that, actually, like, life gets in the way. You're always writing music and what have you, but I did a lot of entrepreneurship stuff. That's what I studied in grad school when I was in Boston and Cambridge. And my life took a turn that led me down this path to going to China. So I spent like a ton of my, last few years in China. So it's been a crazy ride. That's for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah, I also have like a B school refugee story also. So when I'm not doing Ghost Cult, people know that I do marketing and social media, and I do a lot of biz dev and stuff with bands and labels. So cool, fun things. But yeah, like it's funny, the two worlds that don't seem like they would work have made them work for you, which is great.
I've tried to. So, but yeah, that's really cool with your background too. And like the whole marketing thing and social media stuff and all that, it doesn't matter what industry. And I would say in particular, the music industry needs those types, so, but
No doubt, no doubt. And yeah, certainly, I know there's a lot of arguments about, whether it helps or it hurts. I mean, clearly, just in general, good marketing helps your band. But yeah, and of course, it's got a lucky break. But of course, if the music wasn't good and the album is great, you certainly wouldn't have gotten, the, sort of props and respect that you have earned. So, some of it has to do with you.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I wish we were more of a household name, but I'm just very appreciative for all the people who have taken interest in us and who have really appreciated the music and what have you. So we really care about all of our fans out there. It's really important to us.
Right on. And you mentioned MIT. I know the band is presuming you are not splitting your time between Asia and the US, but I know the band is technically based out of Nashville now, but you started in Boston, which has a phenomenal history of music, especially sort of alternative rock and indie rock, right? And I
Yeah,
wanted to kind of hear how you got your start playing and how the band kind of formed. I know there's different members now and stuff, but
that's right. So actually, I feel like a large portion of my music career developed in Boston, and some of which happened when I was going to grad school at MIT. But I used to play at, I used to do a lot of like singer-songwriter sessions, open mics. I'm going to name drop some places around Boston and Cambridge. Lizard Lounge was at the top of the list. When All Asia was still there, I was like frequenting All Asia, which is in Central Square. For those of you who know Cambridge, Massachusetts, and that's no longer there. But I would do basically all the singer-songwriter and open mic sessions that I could get my hands on. And I started a solo project just by my name. This was a number of years ago. I mean, maybe in like 2011 or something. I saved up a little cash. I self-produced this thing. I ran into the studio. I bought like 1 or 2 days of studio time in Lowell, Massachusetts. And it was super cheap there. That's all the money I had at the time. That means do the interview. And banged out basically in 1 or 2 days the solo project. And that was sort of a foundation from which to build. So I formulated a band around that solo project. We played basically everywhere we could in the Boston and Cambridge area. And then I just so happened to sort of like sneak my way into a backstage party that the Killers were having after one of their shows. And then this is sort of the early start of Blackout Balter. I was doing some solo project stuff and all that, and then weaseled my way into this party. Met a couple of the members. Met Dave Kooning in particular, who's the guitar player, and I exchanged numbers with him. We basically hit it off, but long story short, he said, "Hey, text me when you're on the West Coast." I went out at the time to the West Coast pretty frequently on business. I just so happened to text him, never thought he'd answer. He answered, invited me down to San Diego when I was in LA for dinner. And the rest is really history. It's crazy how all that happened.
I feel like Boston and Cambridge is like one of those cities where if you like hang out enough and you go out to drink and hang with friends enough, you will run into like famous musicians who will hang out,
Yeah.
like text you and become your friend.
Totally. I mean, I think it's a really down to earth place. Actually, you have a lot of great creative types. You have a lot of great academics with Harvard and MIT, Boston University, Boston College. I mean, all million great schools are there actually, and it's just like this convergence of a bunch of great ideas, whether it be on the creative side, on the academic side, on the science side. And so it's a really strange, unique, interesting ecosystem for all of that sort of magic to happen, I think. And that, at least from a songwriting stance, that seemed to happen to me. Like I made a lot of personal developments and breakthroughs creatively while I was in Cambridge and Boston. So
Awesome. And what a place for that.
yeah.
And then of course, so you guys make the EP, you form the band, and now we're sort of here today, years later. And this I love Animal, I love the styles represented, and it's like everything is very seamless and organic. It's not like things are stapled on top of each other. It's like very easy for you to go from kind of singer-songwriter stuff to these like anthemic rock things that are almost punk. There's like surf guitar, there's like wonderful harmony stuff, and like really great like accent vocals you don't hear anymore. That's almost like Motown almost, like even though it was probably meant to be like a punk rock thing, but it sounds like almost like true school, like garage rock, really
I love
beautiful
that.
stuff. And I
I love
love how you just kind of tie everything together. And I was going to shout out some of my particular favorite tracks, like
I'd
Burn the
love to
Ships.
hear him.
Yeah, of course, Burn the Ships and She, and I'm sure Chongqing is very personal with the China thing
Yeah.
that you revealed, and Burns and things like that, As I Lay. And they're all different. None of them are, it's all your music. It's all Blackout Balter, but it's all different. And I love that. I love the
Wow, I
variety.
really appreciate your shouting out some of those tunes because I some of those are sort of less mentioned. So As I Lay and Burns, I heard you say, and even She. Actually, she is one of my personal favorites too. And so it's really interesting. I love when people tell me sort of what they respond most to, and it's really great to hear that, Keith. So
Right on. And of course there's a single, Red Letter. I don't want to forget that, because a lot of effort and energy gets put into singles and how they're chosen. But like,
sure.
I try to take an album as a whole. I know that we're kind of in a singles world now, or EP, micro release world, but I still love albums, and this is a really good album, top to bottom.
I appreciate that, and we developed this as such too. So we wanted start to finish. We wanted to sort of take the listener on a journey. And you're right. I mean, in today's single culture, it's harder to do that because you don't even know if people are going to listen to it from start to finish. And then if you listen via Spotify, it like defaults to this like random mix of the album. It's like, whoa, wait, like I just want to hear it start to finish. But yeah, 14 songs, it's a long album, and we really wanted to take people on sort of this up and down journey, and I hope we've done that through Animal.
Right on. And then, of course, owing to your roots as a singer-songwriter, music is also about stories. As much as like, oh, I wrote
Yeah.
these really cool songs, it's about, stories. I imagine you said some of them are personal. I imagine they're, life experience. You have to have some in between albums. It's been quite some time since the
Yeah.
EP. So, obviously some of these are, tied to things in your life, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I generally actually like, I look at songwriting as like having two predominant schools. One is One is more of the storytelling school, like let's call that the Bob Dylan school of songwriting. And then one is a little bit more abstract. I'm talking like later Beatles. And we actually try to, even though we're not even close to the Beatles, we try to sort of stick to more of the abstract side. So when I write songs, I try to write feelings as opposed to straight stories. But in pushing hard to convey certain feelings, I oftentimes have to revert to, of course, individual experiences I've lived and all that kind of stuff. And that is all over the album. So yeah, you mentioned Chongqing. That's sort of my nod to China. I've spent a ton of time in China over the past 6 years as I was building a couple companies there. And then as in, even in the last project, Twist and Bend, I feel like my time as a military officer really, really shows through. So a lot of I'm very preferential to marching beats and drum rolls, and you can kind of hear the simple marching drum beats on a number of songs throughout the album. That's sort of a nod to my military time. And then building off of that, like the call and response sort of stuff you hear in Wild One and a couple other of the tunes on the album, that's all like military Jody style marching call and response songs. And that was a really big part of my life. And I think it shows through on the album.
That's amazing. And of course, marching like rhythms and call and response also just practically owe themselves to like the earliest modern music, blues and
Oh, totally.
Western Africa's music, like Orisha and stuff like
Exactly.
that, like religious stuff
Exactly.
even. So I totally get that Beatles vibe, that late Beatles, what I
Yeah.
consider to be the good Beatles. Sorry,
Yeah, me too.
the late Beatles is my favorite. Like after they started taking LSD, they got so much better. I don't know why.
Exactly.
Rubber Soul Revolver to the End is like if I'm gonna pick an era, that's the era.
Same.
And
Same here.
and it comes through. I totally dig I hear it in the vocals, I hear it in things. You can't go wrong with a backbeat, man. Like it still works. I don't know how 55 years, 60 years later, these rhythms and these riffs, it's like on one hand, it's like the Stones and Beatles did it all already and Dylan wrote it all already. And then it's on the other hand, it's like, oh, I hear something new every day. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't think of that before. So
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching the video so far. If you enjoy content like this, make sure you like and subscribe at the button below. You get notified every time we put out a new video, at least 3 every week.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, we sort of created She around the sort of 50s, early 60s rock aesthetic. And when I was writing that song, I was wondering if we were going too much in that direction. And then when we were producing the song in the studio, I was telling our drummer to make sure he was doing sort of, of course, there's the hi-hat snare thing, but it's sort of more of an open hi-hat snare thing that's very important in that earlier rock music. So that's all there in She for sure. And then on tunes like Surf, for example, you were mentioning the backbeat, but the whole that is like so, I don't even know what the word is, almost like primal. You hear that stuff and you can't help but like it. So I just think that's, it's all in that music, and those are tools as songwriters you can use to sort of, I don't know, get your point across.
Right on, right on. I wonder if also either owing back to your time as sort of more of a solo artist or more recently, if you were really into sort of the very lo-fi, early rock and roll, garagey rock stuff, because I hear like
Totally.
the great like open guitar chords and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So absolutely. Like basically I cut my teeth when I was really young on a lot of the garage rock type stuff. And then actually sort of what I call like the original founding punk rock movement. And that goes everything from the Doors, who actually, I've never been a huge fan of the Doors music. I've been a huge fan of Jim Morrison's attitude. That to me was the punk rock of the Doors. And then on to Iggy Pop and the Stooges. And then, of course, Bowie and the New York scene with the Velvet Underground, and the list goes on and on. The Ramones and New York Dolls, and then on to the late 70s, early 80s hardcore scene out of LA predominantly. Well, all over. DC has some too, but Black Flag had my heart. So Black Flag, and then following Keith Morris to like the Circle Jerks, and then I mean, there's just so much stuff. Minor Threat and Bad Brains. I mean, I could go on, but all of this stuff was very important into sort of the shaping of my thinking around songwriting and melodic development and attitude in music. And when I started listening to these bands, and I was exposed to these bands through my super close cousins, Bane and Andrew, they early on when I was playing guitar and listening to Nirvana and learning the power chord, they exposed me to this hardcore rock and roll. And I, you know, listening to Nirvana and then putting that together with the hardcore punk rock stuff, it showed me that it was less about talent and musicianship than it was about passion and attitude. And to this day, I really believe that like art is more about passion and attitude than anything else. And so, yeah, that was really important to my early musical life.
That's beautiful, man. I love that sentiment. That's great. And I couldn't agree more. Obviously, this is a bizarre time in the world, and I sincerely hope you're well, the band is well, your families, your friends. Nobody's harmed, sick, or, you know, have their rights impinged upon during this period of time. And it's weird to put a record out in the middle of this unknown, uncertain time. So I know we briefly talked about like streaming, but like, how's your thoughts on sort of promoting this record in this weird, bizarro time?
It's been really strange. We had a deadline. We pushed the deadline a little when COVID sort of exploded. But I told our whole team, the publicist, marketing side, and all that I essentially wanted to persist and keep our general time frame of 2020 as opposed to pushing things to 2021. And I stand by that today. I mean, we could have waited and maybe it would have been better for one reason or another. For example, we could have toured with the album. But as an artist, I'm more concerned about sort of getting the message out than I am like making sure that commercially it's the absolute most perfect time in the world. So we're continuing the songwrite. I hope that we can put out another album in 2021. It took us a while between the EP and the full debut album, and I hope that we can get a little quicker, and I think we will. But right now, yeah, it's tough. I mean, we're doing some live streams. In fact, we're doing a pre-recorded live stream tonight with the band at a local venue here in town, and we've done a couple in the recent past that were syndicated, one through Rockwood Music Hall out of New York and another for Dash Radio out of LA. And we'll continue to do those things, but it's a really strange time. So we're really looking at 2021 to get on the road finally and tour for this album. And I hope to do some overseas stuff. We'll certainly do some stuff in the US, but we're getting some good traction right now overseas, and I'd like to build those markets as well.
Awesome. You know, obviously, beside being busy with your many ventures and working on new music, what else have you been doing just to keep yourself busy and occupied during this insane year?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, doing a lot of music stuff, always building new companies and what have you. So I'm an entrepreneur. That's what brought me over to China a number of years ago. Built a couple companies there. I'm working on a new company that's performing some research in Canada right now. So my life's a bit crazy outside of music, but I mean, generally speaking, I just like to do cool stuff with cool people. So yeah, that's me. I mean, it's just a strange time though. You like go outside, I'm a social guy. I'm an extrovert, and you walk into a bar or something or a restaurant, you have to wear your mask. I mean, I've found it's really hard to like read people with their masks on, and sometimes to even hear what they're saying. And it really cramps my style.
Nice. Maybe there's a company in that for you to develop a mask where we can actually either see through the mask or hear
Exactly.
better. Maybe we'll have to get some like earbuds that work for masks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but yeah, I hope we overcome this thing. I'm sure we will. I know you shouted
Yeah.
out all these venues and maybe miss Boston a bunch and Cambridge a bunch, but I hope live music is everything. Certainly sounds like it is for you. It is for me. It has been
Yeah.
a huge force for my life. New York, Boston, LA, wherever, Chicago, Nashville. I mean, Music City, for crying out loud. Like, we can't lose all these little clubs, because I feel like real change in music happens. Obviously I love seeing bands succeed and play giant theaters, but like little clubs is really where it
It's
begins. And
It's totally where my heart is, Keith, actually, these little clubs. In fact, tonight for the pre-recorded live stream thing we're playing at a place called Rudy's Jazz Room, which is one of the more well-known, sort of fairly famous, but sort of smaller, mid-sized venues. And I love those. And we were talking even before we pressed record on this call about the Boston and Cambridge scene and the Middle East and TTs and Great Scott. And I mean, Brighton Music Hall. I mean, the list goes on and on. The Paradise. These are amazing venues. These are the venues that actually I prefer to go to listen to music. That's the real, that's like the sticky floor rock club stuff. That's a real rock club, and I love that.
right on. Still to this day, I'm rooting for them. We were talking about Great Scott closing. I
Yeah,
do believe they may reopen, but it just breaks my heart. I used to live right over there, and
totally.
spent so many shows there. I love Brighton Music Hall,
Me
and
too.
Harper's Ferry before it was Brighton Music Hall. That's how
Yep.
old I am. And but yeah, man, I appreciate your sensibility about that stuff, and yeah, I hope we get it back. Keep your head up, and
Yep.
keep pressing on. This record's great. I hope everybody gets to hear it, and good luck in your business ventures. It's really exciting.
I really appreciate everything, Keith. You're a great guy. I look forward to keeping in touch, and thanks again for having me on the show.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for hanging out with Ghost Cult. We appreciate you. Take care.
All righty. Thank you, Keith.